Again.
Hey, thanks. I think it might take a minute to show up on the platforms to spread,
Yeah,
but
no,
yeah.
no worries. Today's chat in my brain, I've had a Chat GPT or AI generated content kind of knocking around my brain because I've been doing some reading and a bit of research recently, and it's
Mhm.
been getting my attention from various angles. So I thought we could have a little bit of a chat about that this morning. Um, so have you come across Chat GPT before?
Well, it's quite difficult to not come across it right
Yeah.
now. It's a very trending topic, but I have to be transparent. I don't have much experience with ChatGPT itself. I've worked with AI driven on copywriting platforms such as Copy AI or Jasper, but yeah, that's really the extent that I have, the experience that I have with these. I know for a fact that David from our team used those tools to build the copy for our website, our social media platforms, and whatnot. Pretty much, because what are the things it can't do really when it comes
Yeah,
to copy?
nice.
It's very all relevant, but that's where my wisdom and knowledge ends. So I kind of
Yeah,
rely
I
on
mean,
you to enlighten me a bit.
well, I haven't used any other tools really. I think, yeah, Chat GPT, it became unable to ignore it in various contexts, particularly from an academic point of view as well. Because one of my roles is kind of teaching and working with students and apprentices, and there's a lot of noise around that in terms of the AI generated content for writing essays and reports and things like that. But I'll come back to that.
But I have a
Um,
question at this point, actually.
yeah, go for it.
Have you had any students using AI tools to write essays for you to
Well,
mark?
so I wouldn't know. So I don't actually. So
Oh,
it's a
you
good
wouldn't?
question.
Okay, okay.
No. Well, it's interesting. It's in the back of my mind now. It's playing in the back of my mind because, yeah, But I would say a lot of what I work on in my academic context, a lot of it's more practical based. So it's more building stuff, so around code, and that's the benefit of that is they're actually producing outputs rather than just writing essays.
Hmm.
I think there is a whole line of argument around more authentic assessments going beyond just essays and reports, which is there's an argument for that anyway, but now with kind of AI generated content, it's becoming more important. But it depends on the topic, right? It depends on the subject. So if you're doing a topic such as, I guess, like psychology or medicine, where you have to write about things, then you can't really get away with that. But more of a practical topic like computing, software engineering, you can lean more towards the practical creation of sort of applications. But we know AI generated content. Not, I mean, Chat GPT itself can be used to write code as well. And something that I've used a bit more is GitHub Copilot, which I've also mentioned to students, and some of
Hmm.
them students can actually get access to GitHub Copilot for free,
Hmm.
and that will that's I found that incredibly powerful, both on like PHP development and sort of JavaScript development, and really applies to everything. But you can type comments in your code editor, in your IDE, your integrated development environment. You can type a comment that says what you want it to do, give it a few seconds, and it'll generate a massive code snippet for you. A lot of the
Hmm.
time, it gives you a great foundation to work from. Doesn't necessarily get it 100% right all the time, but it's incredibly powerful. Um, Again, as in a teaching environment, should we be encouraging new coders or new software engineers to be using these tools from day one? It's like I don't have an answer for that yet, but I think they are incredibly useful tools. Um,
Well,
yeah.
okay. So there's a few things that you mentioned. First, so let's go from backwards a bit. So the GitHub Copilot, I know Lucas has been singing praises about it, and actually this very morning he said how it helped him learn about some kind of WordPress feature that to actually solved his problem. So he basically didn't know what he didn't know, but then as he was typing code, the tool was like, "Hey, how about this way?" And those were like, "Oh wow, that's actually good."
I found that. I found
Yeah.
that as well. It
So
does.
it knows
It's a
far
great
more than
teaching
you.
tool.
It is. It is. Truly is. And obviously it is. I guess it is infused with some kind of degree of laziness, I would say, right? It does the thinking for you. But what I've learned in my years of being a coder and what I've seen around the internet and on Twitter, etc., is that there's no reason to reinvent the wheel. And there's a reason why portals like Stack Overflow are so popular is because people go in there to copy and paste the code, whether that's a basic code, whether it's to find some more complex solutions to their problems. If someone has already done the work for you, yes, you can appreciate it. Yes, you can try to understand it. So next time around, you have some kind of intricacy in knowledge about the problem, but there's nothing wrong about copying and pasting. That's my bottom line, and I've done it myself. And someone just says that the best developers are lazy, though, right? Is exactly right. I think lazy people, in a way, run innovations because they cut corners, and that's basically what the productivity and efficiency is about. I'm not saying that every type of laziness is good. Uh, I mean, if you don't get up from the couch every morning, you won't do anything. But at some point, laziness helps. It helps. It forces you to find ways to the destination and in a much shorter time. But that's the one. The other thing is actually the code generating. I haven't tried it myself, but I've heard great things about it, especially when it comes to generating snippets of code for some kind of basic functionality, and not in a way that we all know it just works out of the box. You can literally copy and paste it, but the beauty of it is actually well formatted. It complies to all the standards of any particular language that you use, and finally it comes with comments. It will literally explain the code to you. And I know for a fact that many developers don't bother with comments, which is a shame. I always recommend that you write a comment even for your own sake, because when you come to the code again in 2 months' time, I bet you won't know why it's there, what it does, etc. And comments actually help you refresh the memory. But the comments that AI generates are just like spot on. Like, we do this because blah blah blah. Like the next line, okay, and so it just like creates it writes this a story around the code it has generated. It's fantastic. So I highly recommend that too.
Yeah, nice. I think there's different arguments about writing comments in code. I don't have strong opinions either way. I've got on my reading list Clean Code by famous Uncle Bob, as they call him. I still haven't read it. Clean Code. I probably should have read it by now. Getting on a bit. I think there's arguments around there about clean code. If you need to add comments, then your code isn't clear enough. But I think there's arguments both ways. What I found with GitHub Copilot, though, linking back to ChatGPT, which a lot of people are using to generate content and articles, or other tools like copy.ai, which I think you said you use. I noticed in GitHub Copilot, so in your code editor in VS Code or whatever, which I use, you can start typing content and it will create the content for you. Or like you're saying about comments, you can actually write content within using GitHub Copilot as well. So there's this kind of overlapping. I know there's lots of there were ethical concerns over GitHub Copilot because it was trained on millions and millions of lines of open source code, and it's like, well, now they're charging for it. Should they be benefiting from that? It is a difficult one. There's lots of ethical issues around it, about AI in general, right? And things you've got to be careful of. Thanks, Chandy, for coming on the chat. To a friend of mine. I think the best developers are lazy, and I pride myself on being professionally lazy. I mean, that laziness is how you find more efficient ways of doing things, right?
True.
And I think on the topic of not reinventing things, which you mentioned earlier, Thomas. I mean, if you think about architecture or like building houses, right? If you're designing a new house, unless you're like a radical like architect, you don't reinvent the rules of architecture to build a house, right? There's like standard rules, and not that I know what they are, but you won't kind of reinvent everything. You'll kind of and you'll have you'll reuse bricks. You don't need to make the bricks yourself or make all the materials. It's more of a putting things together, and I think that's what software engineering is kind of really about. Even though in the early days when you're learning code, it's actually quite nice, quite good to kind of learn things from the ground up, from scratch, right, and build things from scratch, just so you can kind of understand things. But yeah, so in terms of coming back to the main topic, we're talking about AI generated content for websites. We kind of talked about code, which obviously does relate to websites, helps us build websites quicker. But in terms of actual content, written content, perhaps even tweets, like social media, what are your views on that, Thomas? The potential pros and cons of content that we can generate from AI tools?
Okay. Well, we, as I said at the beginning, we did use some of the tools to help us ignite pieces of content, and I don't mean write them for us, but to just lay the grounds for longer pieces of text, or even having some kind of newsletter. We do have an idea what our audience likes and what they don't, but sometimes having to come up with ideas, and even the intro paragraph is the toughest bit. So, when you look at the blank piece of paper, that's the breaking moment, right? If you start writing, you get that one sentence in, it somehow evolves into something bigger almost effortlessly. And that's where AI is quite beautiful. It has that power to ignite the idea in your head, and then you can just take over and finish it. And I know there are concerns around having duplicated content from the website next door, let's say, and because many people use it and probably they put similar queries to yours. But I think as long as you take over at some point and make it yours, it's okay. Just like we had this chat in the office this morning. We as a team, going forward, we will write together sort of criteria for individual tasks. If you have let's say, create a section on the website, we will come together and write a framework of requirements, so some just basic high level bullet points, so that when a developer takes over, they know how to carry on the work, but it's on them to sort of expand it into a full, complete feature, right? So that framework is on us. And I guess AI does the same thing and gives you that kind of template. So this is great. It really worked fantastic for us, and it sped up our work a lot. And we are all about efficiency, and we are a forward thinking team, and I think those tools are extremely interesting to us. We're curious about that stuff, and we look into integrating them everywhere. And just very lately, I saw that ChatGPT has been used in WhatsApp, so you can literally talk to it via WhatsApp. I've seen some tweets flying around, so people are already integrating it into many other platforms, and I think we will only see more and more of it in our daily lives, especially in lives of people who are so close to the digital world as we are, and you, John, and everyone else in the chat probably. So I think that's where I am right now.
Yeah. I think what's really interesting about Chat GPT. So I don't think I actually mentioned what GPT stood for. Just for those that maybe aren't aware. So generative pre-trained transformer, not the most catchy title, but it's essentially a machine learning model. And by you give it some text, then the Chat GPT is developed by I think OpenAI. You give it some text. It's meant as a natural language conversational kind of agent, so you can talk to it and it will talk back. So I think it can. The really interesting thing about it is it can be used in so many different ways, that maybe haven't even been considered by those that sort of put it together. And so it can behave in either incredibly interesting positive ways, or it can behave in actually quite negative ways. I think some people are using it almost like a buddy, a kind of like a study buddy, or in terms of like when
Hmm.
we're writing, and instead of using Google, sort of ask it things. Um, there's there's potential for psychological and sort of mental health applications as well. There always have been for like AI and chatbots. Something that I experimented with recently. So I've got a couple of different projects going on. One is a medical terminology app, to a bit like Duolingo, but for
Hmm.
medical terminology, like
Hmm.
complicated medical terms. And part of that, the work to go into the app is to uh, my colleagues, co-founders on the project, who are from the healthcare side of things, they have healthcare experience. We have to get a load of content, all the words and definitions, but then breaking down words, these technical words, uh, um, into the word parts, like the prefix, the root, and the suffix, and then get the definition for each of those parts. And
Mm.
I thought, okay, we've got to do all this work. Um, why don't I see if ChatGPT can? If I tell it explicitly what I want, can it go and find the definitions, break down the word parts for me, and find the definitions? And it did. I don't know if I've put it out on Twitter yet. I've got a screenshot, I think, of the results, and it generated it in table format. I told it things such as I didn't give it a specific list of questions, but I just told it to go and get a load of medical terminology definitions for me, and then break it down into prefix, root, and suffix. I said not
Hmm.
all words will always have a prefix or a suffix. All words will have a root, and I told it the columns to break things into. So I defined the columns, and when it did it, it gave me 10 medical words with the word parts broken down, and I shared it with my colleagues who've got the medical expertise, and it was pretty much spot on, which was like fantastic, right? It's almost like, and from that point of view, um, it's like you can get it to do sort of manually intensive tasks that generally is kind of low risk, but it's going to get definitions and putting it into certain structures. So that's really interesting.
Hmm.
The interesting other experiment that I did was, again, in an academic context, which I think I mentioned to you earlier, Thomas. I asked it to go and find some academic references on the topic of like online learning, and give me some interesting quotes from those references. And I typed that in, and it said, right, yeah, here they are. And it
Hmm.
typed out five of them, and it gave me the Harvard, properly academically formatted Harvard referencing with the title, the authors, the date, and the publication, and then a quote from each. And it's like, wow, this looks amazing. These look like really interesting papers and really interesting quotes. And then when I went to go and look to see where they came from, they were all made up. They were completely fabricated, but it presented them as actual published papers. Now, can you imagine if I didn't go and check, and then I went and put that stuff, in I passed it on, or I put it in another paper, and it made it all up. I even specified on the follow up, okay, these seem to be made up. Can you go and find some real ones? And it said, oh, apologies for the mistake. Here are some real ones. And then it went and generated another set of random made up ones. So I think that proves the point that at the moment it can't really go outside and do real time kind of research. It's only based on the model that's been trained on. If it can go and like find real stuff like that, then that would be incredible. But I think it just highlights there's pitfalls there. There's pros and cons, and I've seen experiences of people asking it maths questions, and it kind of looking very confident and looking very like, oh yeah, that kind of makes sense, but it got the math wrong. Like it
Mm-hmm.
interpreted the question wrong, or it used the wrong number, or it inverted something incorrectly. So again, we still need to develop critical thinking to actually not just take it for its word, and actually, double check things. Got a couple of questions coming in the chat, which is awesome. So Jack, hey Jack, you talk about SEO, search engine optimization, and AI. I suppose that comes back to the topic of like content creation, because SEO is basically about good content, right? I don't know if you've got any thoughts on that, Thomas. I know we've got David in the chat as well, so he might want
Hey,
to throw
Jack.
some comments in there as well.
Yeah, I think David's helping out with answering the questions. But hey, Jack, thanks for the question. I think, what do we know? Well, we are already using AI for SEO, don't we? I mean, Google Search Console, Ahrefs, any of those tools, they are AI driven. At the end of the day, I think what we know as AI is really data reading, right? It's making sense out of that, like, infinite amounts of data. We are heading into the age of dataism, really. And if you look into Ahrefs, which is our favorite tool for finding those content gaps that I think you have in mind by asking that question, or different things like what's the difference between us and then competitors, why they are ranking better than we are, etc. What's the next piece of content that we can write that will just blow everyone's mind? We already have tools for this, so such as Ahrefs. The tool itself will suggest potential content gaps, potential ideas, but again, it's up to you to interpret them, whether they're right or wrong, and put them in the larger context. Where Open AI and GPT overall, it comes into play is I think it will make that interpretation on your behalf. So you literally you are that writing monkey that gets uh, an idea handed over. Do this, and you'll be fine. And you can just trust it and just write a blog about it, record a video about it, or maybe tweak your meta titles for Google. At the end of the day, I mean, Google, it is AI, right? It's just like a bunch of algorithms making sense of the world. So maybe AI, the other type of AI, like OpenAI, ChatGPT, they can talk to each other and then let people know what they want. It's just it kind of changes the dynamics of the conversation if computer says to you what it wants. In a way, it already does it on the basic level. You get form inputs, right? You got prompts and different things. It will tell you, hey, plug USB now, not later, not earlier. Now it can tell you, but at the end of the day, it's actually developer telling you that. Whereas in what I'm saying is maybe AI can be more clever than that and just make sense of it all on its own without people's input whatsoever, and then you can just trust it to that
Yeah,
extent.
you'll just have bots talking to bots, right? And then we
Yeah,
can
it
all
is.
just like
Yeah,
sit back. On the
yeah.
again on the topic of like meta tags and SEO, I've heard some people have good
Mm-hmm.
success, particularly at scale when it comes to e-commerce, like generating AI generated meta descriptions for like product pages. Let's say we've got thousands of product pages. It can be quite good at that. I think that's a great use case because it's potentially it's low risk, right? If there's something a little bit wrong or something a little bit incorrect in a meta description, I mean, if it's just a product, that like a consumer product that's not, not related to healthcare or fitness, it's pretty low risk if it gets it slightly wrong. But the benefit overall is that it creates this unique content.
Mm-hmm.
You can get AI to summarize content and use that in meta tags.
My question would be, if everyone gets to use AI,
Yeah,
who gets the advantage?
yeah,
Like if
well, yeah,
everyone perfects their meta title, um, probably AI would suggest everyone the same meta title for particular keywords. No.
yeah. With wider adoption,
Yeah.
when it becomes more ubiquitous, it's less of a differentiator. But I think
Yeah.
that's the not everybody's going to have the ability to use AI, right? It's like the fundamentals of SEO and content creation and meta tag optimization.
Hmm.
A lot of people know it, but it's not about knowing it. It's about execution, right? Same with business, right? It's not about having a good idea. It's about execution. Can you actually implement it? So I think it's an interesting time at the moment because Chat GPT is kind of free to use. Probably won't
Hmm.
be for forever. Um, that's potentially giving people a lot of competitive advantage about being able to do things that might take days and doing it in minutes or hours. So right now, um, but I know on the coding side, GitHub Copilot has come. That was free for everybody. Now it's paid, but actually still free for quite a lot of people, including academics, students, etc. And that is giving people a competitive advantage in terms of being able to develop stuff more so quickly.
One other thought that just something popped in my mind as what you were talking. I think where AI such as ChatGPT helps a lot is with finding tabular data. For example, let's say you would go on your own and search in Google, I don't know, top 10 grossing movies in all time. And you would want it sorted by director or the revenue itself or the year that they published. Whatever that
Mm.
is, it would take you quite a lot of time unless someone else did it. But then, it's the case of trusting that person, how up to date that article was, and all of that. But say you want it, you're selfish, you want to do it yourself, and that's it. Okay, it will take you ages. Whereas in ChatGPT, you can just type in, "Hey, can you give me those movies ordered by this, grouped by that?" And you literally get a table that you can click and copy, or even better, you can follow up because the chat can hold up a conversation. You can follow up. Thanks so much. Could you prepare that as CSV file? Oh yeah, sure, no problem. Download done. Literally, like 1 minute chat with the chat. I guess with the chatbot saves
Yeah,
you like an hour, 2 hours of work. So if you're writing a blog content that needs some kind of serious data backup, then I would probably suggest asking ChatGPT to generate some kind of table,
yeah,
charts, any kind of data parsing that it can handle. Yeah.
yeah. No, it's almost like the it's like a virtual assistant, right?
Hmm.
But I think it's important to know the boundaries and the limits. So at the moment,
Mm.
it can't go and it won't go and scrape a website for you, as far as I know.
Hmm.
It won't go beyond what it's been trained on. But it's a bit like is it Jarvis from Iron Man? Right? Is it Jarvis? Is
Jarvis. Hmm.
the
Yeah.
robot, the
Hmm.
artificial? But yeah,
Yeah.
so we're almost there, right? And it is one key difference between things like Alexa and Siri. Hopefully, my devices won't go off. Um,
Actually.
that that the persistent contextual awareness of a chat, because on ChatGPT on the web interface you can create separate chats, and each chat
Hmm.
has full contextual history, so it knows what you're referring to when you, so like you said, you can say, okay, now do that again, but like exports, create it as a CSV, or do that again, but regenerate it, or reorder it, or tweak it this way,
Hmm.
which is really powerful. So I think, yeah, exciting times with content
Yeah.
generation.
Well,
Um,
unless we get to a wider adoption of systems like ChatGPT, we're stuck with Royal Mail helpbots, and these are bad
yeah,
times to live in. Just finding out where your
yeah, yeah,
parcel is just terrible. So hopefully, ChatGPT can improve those kind of helper bots and all kinds of system really where human computer interaction is involved. I think we'll see more and more of that.
yeah. Let's see where things go. Well, look, let's wrap it
Yeah,
up. We've been talking for half an hour, which actually we could probably talk for more, but it's a fascinating topic. And
sure, it
thanks for
is.
those that tuned in, and hopefully found
Maybe I
that
can play
interesting.
around with it a bit more and then we can have another follow up
Yeah,
like
yeah.
this one.
We'll check in again. We'll get Chat GPT to generate a script for us, which we can then reenact
Yes, that'd be
as
awesome.
as
Actually,
as
it's a good
as
idea.
human slaves of the robot overlords.
Yes. We always like, what should we talk about? What's interesting? And then we can just ask the bot, right? We don't have to
Yeah,
bother ourselves. Simple.
that's it.
Yeah. Let's
It's
become brainless monkeys that we just reenact what they tell us. That's lovely
I'm
times.
I'm halfway there.
Halfway.
Good.
Okay, then top it
Cool.
off with laziness, and we're good to go.
Yep, that's it.
Yeah.
That's the ultimate goal. All right, cool.
Thanks,
Thanks,
guys.
Thomas. That was
Thanks
awesome.
so much.
We'll speak
See you.